All thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim, known by many names and beyond all names. Abuna Rastafari, all our relations, blessed love and peace. Alrighty. What do we got today? The elements. It's snowing right now. It is so laid down. The day has set at this moment upon this American Thanksgiving, this day of American Thanksgiving. Snowfall, cold, crisp autumn air turning into winter. A few weeks ago, we have snow before. This is not our first snowfall of the approaching season. However, in the previous snowfall, we have communication that it's going to warm up after the first one because the trees have yet to receive the winter. There are a lot of leaves still on the trees at that time. So snow collects along the branches, but there's still a lot of leaves on the trees yet. So there's indication, there's communication that snow likely will warm up. And indeed it does. It warms up, it rains for the next week or two. This week it gets colder, rains, and then strong winds yesterday from the north, from the lake. And then starting yesterday and then proper today, snow. That's our experience at this moment. And amidst the snow, kinfolk on this continent are partaking in festivities. And we share this consideration amidst all that. Related directly, indirectly, and all about. So, actually, before we do the kicker, we share some further circumstances, some further environment and atmosphere. So, a number of years ago, over a decade ago, likely going on 2 decades, within our Arsona Ashram, we share a parable and metaphor of the righteous mountain. And the parable of the righteous mountain is that when we find ourselves, when we awaken to find and search for and find for and search for and find for ourselves, we liken that to walking up a mountain. It's a trod. It's work. It's diligence. And when we walk upon the mountain, from the foothills, from the valleys, and the shadows, and the depths, when we walk upon the mountain, we raise our elevation. We get some further perspective of the valley and the plains and the coasts and the continents beyond. We get further perspective. Higher and higher, further and further. We can get a little bit egotistical and otherwise. The higher we go, the fewer there are. Yet there's humbleness. It's a righteous mountain, so it must be a humble mountain with humble heights. And one of the adages upon the righteous mountain is that whenever people interact with each other, if somebody's coming down the mountain whilst one is going up, there's no hierarchy. Everyone is exactly anytime anyone encounters anybody else, the beings encountering each other are necessarily exactly on the same level. Regardless of trajectory or whatever, at that moment, same level. No one's higher than the other. One can talk about being higher, one can talk about having been lower, and otherwise. Both are this same level on the righteous mountain. And rather than debating against each other, devaluing each other, proving who's higher than who or whatever else, anybody who wants to claim a higher elevation, rather than yip yapping, just keep on climbing. That's it. It speaks for itself. You ain't got to say anything. If you want to be higher, if you want to be seen as higher, keep on trotting. That's the righteous mountain. Now, the thing about the righteous mountain is that eventually there is an apex. Apex piety. How about that? Almost, perhaps, in this life. But as we know, in this earthly sense, mountains have a point, a peak. And eventually, whenever we have the occasion of arriving at that peak, that apex, the epitome of the heights upon which the righteous mountain shares, we have a decision to make. We can either stay there at that peak and revel in that euphoria, or we can start to go back down the mountain. Because the actuality, for those who know an elementary school level amount of mountains, is that there is the tree line. Mountains that have enough of an elevation have a tree line. What that tree line means, for those wanting of knowledge, is that life grows upon the mountain up to a certain elevation. Trees, plants grow upon the mountain. Animals reside upon the mountain up to a certain elevation. And then beyond that elevation, that's the tree line. That elevation is the tree line. Beyond that elevation, life is unsustainable. Plants don't grow. It's too high, it's too cold, it's too whatever. It's too much. Life is unsustainable. So, for those of us trotting upon the righteous mountain, and we reach that tree line, we know it goes further up. But to go further up, it's unsustainable. Can't live up there in perpetuity. Either we go up there without coming back, or we return to that tree line level of righteousness, where the oasis is, where the watering hole is, where life is. That tree line. So again, it's humbling. There's levels, there's actuality, and there's decisions to make. There's balance. And there's an intrinsic necessary cooperation with other beings who are making the same decisions or similar decisions. That's the righteous mountain. The parable goes further and further details and nuances and otherwise, but that's the basic gist of it. The main point of it for the beginning consideration is abstaining from pointing fingers at others, of devaluing others, because those who are truly interested in truth and righteousness have no need of belittling anyone else, and instead it's just a matter of going further up the mountain. So that's the basics of the righteous mountain. Now, with that being said, with a full stop on that, share something else that we communicate for a number of years, actually, with the Sonar Ashram, the Sango Yosef Rastafari, for many years at this point, which is the state of civilization, or D. And again, probably at least over a decade, maybe about 2 decades at this point, we share another metaphor, perhaps less poetic, further modernized and scientificized, industrialized. But one of the metaphors, and we're not the only ones to use this, is being utilized before us, where we're drawing from what other people have said. Probably same thing with the righteous mountain. Mountain is utilized for so many metaphors and parables. But this notion about civilization, where civilization is at, again, over a decade ago, what we would describe the circumstances is like a speeding train heading for the cliff. And people on the train, many people on the train, just living it up, trying to do their best to be in the luxury first class cart, with the fine dining and sleeper cars and luxury and everything else like that, oblivious or indifferent or apathetic or nihilistic to the fact that the train is speeding straight towards a cliff. And other people on the train, like trying to tell people, yo, we need to do something, da 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 da. And that's the scene for us with the Sona Ashram over a decade ago, even 2 decades ago. Society, speeding train. Many people are articulating similar concerns. But the speeding train continues on, day after day, year after year, since that time, even before our time, in this generation or previous generations, but particularly in the United States, particularly over the past few generations, it's building up to that. And so when we experience, it's like a speeding train towards the cliff. After a few years, we kind of advance, and it's not a matter of us making this choice. It's like, this is what's presented to us. This is what is like, yo, this is where things are. This is like the news update that we receive. So at some point, when the train has not been corrected, when there hasn't been sufficient attention to adjust the tracks and rectify the situation, and now, yo, the train is right there on the precipice. And it's not even a matter, it's less of a matter of like trying to fix it. It's a matter of like, yo, we gotta make that decision of jumping off this train. And like, yo, it's tough to think about like whatever injuries we might occur and difficulties and challenges we may occur in jumping off this train. But yo, we're getting to that point where it's about too late for this train to expect this train to stop. It's headed for the cliff. And those who are on it like are like drunk and not paying attention. That's no hate and that's no shade. It's just it's facts, and it's not better than or less than. We'll get to that in a minute, God willing. But it's just like, it's facts. Kinfolk are intoxicated, enveloped, enslaved, indentured to just the mechanics. So it's like, okay, we have to let go of trying to save the train at this point, or even trying to like convince people on the train to save itself. We have to get off this train. And so we make that decision many years ago of opting out of civilization, out of the imperial system, even whilst doing these things still. So again, God willing, in a little bit, in a brief moment, further explanation about that. But we jump off the train in our own ways, in different ways, and we incur the challenges. We continue to incur the challenges because we're still connected, and that's a challenge. But anyways, that was a few years ago. So it went from a speeding train to like the precipice, and then, but it's gone even further since then. After a few years, again, it hasn't stopped, and it becomes even just so further. It becomes so further obvious. It becomes so further painfully obvious of like the actuality that's being conveyed through the media. In addition, it's just it itself is beyond belief. It's like, how do people even like pretend that this is actual? And at that point, the communication that is shared with us is that the train is off the cliff already. It's crashing. It's off the cliff. It's already off. And at this point, like there's like a very brief period for people to like do their last minute kind of maneuvers of rescuing, jumping off the train, finding some kind of parachute or doing something to get off that train before it crashes into the ground, because it's already off the cliff. It's off the cliff. It's off the hizzy. So those who have jumped off the train and are still on the higher ground or whatever, there it is. Some of us who jumped off the train have some kind of mechanism, some kind of capability of floating, because we're still holding on to the strings and to the kinfolk who are on the train. But that was the experience, like the third stage, coach. Now let's not confuse the metaphor. That's the third stage of the train going off the cliff. It was approaching, then it was on the precipice, and now at that stage a few years ago, it's off the cliff. and it's crashing. It's just a matter of who's going to jump off the train to get off of it. That's not the state today. We're at stage 4, or at least at stage 4. And that stage 4 is that the train is crashed. And as I'm saying this is like a little bit of a projection in terms of my readiness to navigate with this awareness. So this is somewhat nascent for me, but and that's part of the reason why I'm sharing this, particularly at the cost of accumulating further data on the worldwide infrastructure. The train has crashed. The train has crashed. It's done. And for those of us who have jumped off, we're in the depths of the canyon at this point. We're along the river, the Valley River, the River Valley, and such. The train has crashed. However, in the fusion of this metaphor of the train going off the cliff, that train being world civilization, modern civilization, in the fusion of that metaphor and the parable of the righteous mountain, in arriving within the awareness of stage 4, that the train has already crashed, we also arrive within the nexus, the fusion with the parable of the righteous mountain, in recognizing that it's not a train. It's a waterfall itself. It is a waterfall. It is natural. It's the natural flow. There's an absence of a panic. There's an absence of even a tragedy. It's the continuation of nature. We find ourselves in the river valley with the propensity of continuing up the mountain, residing amidst the oasis of the tree line, continuing to the apex when so inclined, and returning to the tree line, and encountering whatever wildlife and heavenly life we encounter within this migration. But that's it. So that's maybe a little bit of a leap conceptually for the rebellious and the activists and otherwise. That's where we arrived at. It's a waterfall. The crashing of civilization, and additionally, to maintain the calmness and the compassion and the conscientiousness of the natural waterfall. So, that being said, I think what I was supposed to begin this joint with is this statement here, which is this: everything is against you, and everything is for you. Nothing is against you, and nothing is for you. That might sound like yin yang talk. It's truth. How can both of those statements, how can everything be for something and nothing be for something? Understand, perhaps further accessible is understanding the nature of nothing, how important nothing is. Emptiness. We can estimate it as quietude, as solitude, peacefulness, tranquility, emptiness, detachment. But it's not a sadistic, controlling kind of callousness. It's a transcendent detachment, a calmness, nothing, and nothing is against you, nothing is for you. So that might take some marination, requires some time to think about that, let that soak in somewhat, and work with that for a moment. But with that nothingness, with a proficiency of nothingness, then the next step of everything is increasingly accessible and proximate, or there. It's there. But the big thing in that concept of everything, nothing, and you is you. And understanding who you is. And perhaps even further, why you is. And that's the big kicker. Why you is. When we maintain a proficient understanding of our purpose in life, what we're here to do, what we're here for, amidst the suffering, the nature of life, and all the trials and tribulations and everything, to understand what our purpose is in this life, to heal, and what our gifts are, what our talents are, what our guidance is, what type of healing we're supposed to be doing in this life. We have that understanding proficiently, and we honor that. Then everything else is put in place. Everything else is contextualized. Everything else has its place. Everything else has its lane within our own navigation. Doesn't mean everything is at our snap of our finger, but we have an understanding, a better understanding of where things are, why things are. And ultimately, essentially, who we are individually, even collectively, in this earthly sense, is inconsequential, because ultimately our ultimate essence is the purpose that we serve in this life. Nothing is what we make it. Everything is what we make it, whatever we perceive it to be. When we perceive it as for us, it's for us. When we perceive it as against us, it's against us. We can try to wish for things, but we know in that wishful thinking, we don't believe it. It's not a matter of convincing others. It's not even a matter of convincing ourselves per se. It's a matter of being and believing in our being. Okay. All right. So that's basically the kicker. Okay. So that's the kicker. Nothing is against us. Nothing is for us. Everything is against us and everything is for us. If it's simpler, we can just focus on the first one. Nothing is against us and nothing is for us. Whatever we encounter in this life, whether it's an eviction notice on the door, whether it's threats of violence on the streets, whether it's jealousy, hatred, thirst trapping, simping, fuckboyishness, or whatever else, whatever we encounter in this life, people doing their grinds and their hustles and grime and grifts and all that other type of stuff, their hustles. Did I say hustles? Whatever we encounter in this life, it's easy to personalize it. It's easy to place it within an antagonistic or even like a predatory type of context, whether it's predatoriness towards us or endeavoring to conquer itself in our own type of predatoriness. However, there is a further understanding and awareness and truth. When we have an understanding, a proper understanding of our purpose in life, the purpose in life and our personal respective purpose in life, what we're supposed to be doing, when we have a proficient understanding of that, and it involves a trust, it involves a faith in a greater power than ourselves, a higher power than ourselves, that we know exists. Creator, Tao, Wankantanka, Ahura Mazda, Elohim, Allah, Brahman. There's a higher power, the great mystery. And when that sense of purpose necessarily requires a faith and a trust in that higher purpose, in that higher power that provides or that informs of the higher purpose. So when we have that understanding of what our purpose is and the trust in the higher power, then everything is mathematics. Everything is purposeful. When we get a challenge, when we're given a threat, this is a difficult one, and we have to be very careful about how we articulate this and otherwise. But when we have the understanding of our purpose in life and the purpose of life, then essentially, effectively, it's very careful how we say this, but life, it's beneficial for me to meditate on this before like delving into this articulation, but all right, I'm going to pause on that because that's not the crux of what I'm sharing at the moment. The crux of what I'm sharing is that when we encounter the challenges and we have the tendency of personalizing it, let's focus on that part of it. When we have the tendency of personalizing it, perceiving it as antagonistic, either systemically towards us or personally towards us for whatever reason and whatever plausible logic, to cultivate and optimize that transcendent awareness that whatever it is that's in front of us that we're encountering that seems antagonistic or whatever, and whoever seems to be the author of that, the earthly author of that, to recognize it all comes from that higher power. Ultimately, by nature, by definition, it is the higher power at work. And thus, within our faith and our trust in that higher power, there must necessarily be a good reason, a reason for good within whatever we're confronted with. In that faith in a higher power, intrinsically, there's a recognition of that higher power having benevolence. That's part of the nature of faith. So it's not to be assumed or just understood exclusively tacitly, but just by definition, that's part of it. So we have a faith in the higher power, a trust. Anything that we encounter, as antagonistic as it seems, comes from that higher power and is presented before us, to facilitate, to continue our actualization of our higher purpose. So rather than trying to outright combat it or denounce it per se, it's a matter of saying, okay, do the calculation, do the mathematics. What's going on here? How does this facilitate our ongoing manifestation of our higher purpose? How does this guide us in continuing to share our higher purpose, to share our service, our seva in this world, tikkun olam? Whatever it is, like I said, evictions, violence, grifts, and hustles. It's not a matter of acquiescing to it. It's not a matter of fighting it or trying to conquer it or otherwise, per se. If we need to distance. If we need to, well, there's something before that, of further priority at the moment. Within the challenges that we encounter, the things that seem to be obstacles, the things that seem to be sadistic, tenacious, unrelenting viciousness, whatever it is, conspiracy, oppressor, king, corporation, religion, cult, whatever we're perceiving as an antagonist, is exactly, again, that invitation to graduate to another level in our path of purpose. There is a key, there is an answer, there is a solution. Sometimes it's easy and simple, sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes we have to slow up, meditate, let a lot of things go so that we can concentrate. When we do that, when we let go of the unessential shit that we hold on to, when we let go of the disgenuine and unessential ways of valuing ourselves, thinking we're nice because we got this or because we got that, credentials, cars, and otherwise. When we let go of those things as a reason to value ourselves, and instead we value ourselves just off who we are, ultimately, essentially. When we do that, then we have greater calmness, we have greater stability, we have greater balance and readiness and perspective. We can even say elevation upon the mountain to see the conditions. All right. Endeavoring to focus here. When the challenges confront us, oftentimes whatever fears or intimidations or anger that we experience is because of an imbalance. It's because of a concern of losing something or the perception of loss. And that fear, that anxiety, that anger has the tendency of clouding the vision. When we already let go of the unessential things, then we're less fearful. We're less fearful. We're less fearful. We have greater courage. We have greater calmness. And in that calmness, we have greater leverage in negotiating with the earthly beings that are instruments of those temptations and threats and whatever else. When we are at peace with nothingness, when we are at peace with everything and everythingness, there is greater position for negotiation. In feeling attacked, in feeling threatened, in feeling temptation. Those are experiences of inferiority or weakness are strong words, but of being leveraged and somewhat reactionary. And those experiences of anxiety are easier to manipulate by others who are in positions to do such. When we have an understanding of what our purpose is, what we need, the basics, the essentials of what we need to fulfill that purpose at this moment and continuing, and that's where our focus is. There's less anxiety. There is the b sound is coming out when I'm saying that. There's less anxiety concerning threats and temptations. Doesn't mean invincibility or whatever, but just there's better concentration. Daytime and daylight too is a beneficial time to share these joints, as I mentioned before, talking to myself. So, endeavor to wrap this up at this point. 40 minutes. We don't have much of a choice of keeping this under 4 hours because our data availability here is actually rather modest, to be honest. All right, so the big thing that this is leading to, I've said big kicker, this is the kicker, this is the big kicker, this is the thing. The basic destination and journey in this joint is maintaining calmness, perspective, and an awareness of higher purpose and higher power when encountering any of the things that are in front of us. And instead of getting angry at things that are in an earthly sense clear-cut, egregious, clear-cut atrocities, corruption and otherwise, rather than getting angry, rather than getting fearful, rather than getting judgmental, understanding how these things are instructing us, are giving us our guidance about the next steps we take within our path of fulfilling our purpose in this life. And it's beneficial to plan things. It's beneficial to plan. But at the same time, it's beneficial to abstain from being so entrenched within plans, of it becoming an ego thing, and it becoming a thing of we said we were going to do this and do it. Yes, we abide by our words. That's why we're very careful about what we promise. And we do our best to hold our word. And when we do make promises within our faith, we say, Inshallah, we say, Bezrat Hashem, we say, God willing, because we recognize there's a power greater than ourselves. and greater than anything that we could promise. So we're very careful about making promises, and when doing such, we make that promise with the acknowledgement of a greater power. The destination and the journey. When confronted with those challenges, rather than getting angry, rather than getting fearful, rather than getting in conquest mode or beast mode, to simply recognize, okay, here's something that seems to be very antagonistic, very obstructive, maybe 90% against us perceivably, and maybe 10% for us some way, because there's always a yin-yang balance. And so maybe this is simply just a guidance for us to concentrate strongly or further on that 10%, that little window, that little crevice. Not avoiding confrontation or otherwise, but ultimately, every being, everyone who's perceived as the dictator or the cult or the corporation or whatever, is a child of God. And their kinfolk who are drunk, their kinfolk who are enslaved, their kinfolk who are paralyzed in fear, their kinfolk who are moved through fear. But to recognize that everyone is a child of God. Everyone is doing their best. And when we have that recognition within ourselves of our purpose and our path and the higher power, we have greater patience to see that within others. And so when we see someone doing something that's causing harm to life, then rather than going into battle mode, because we're talking, this is Brahman level consciousness, and the role of the ones that have this consciousness is not to fight, is not to battle, it's not to conquer. It is to teach, it is to share, it is to show. And so it's a matter of having, again, that peace and the patience, and then sharing through our practice. Sometimes it's very clear and evident and cooperative. Sometimes it's scary cooperative, like it's everything. This is unreal because everything is going our way. And sometimes it seems unreal because everything seems to be intentionally, personally against us. Again, letting go of the things, of the unessential things, letting go of the unessential ways we value ourselves, of why we think we're important. Patience. And wherever there is that challenge, to recognize that it is part of the guidance. It is part of instruction. And again, it's not a matter of just saying, oh, okay, here comes the big bad bully. They're telling us to do this. Okay, that must be the direction. It's not that clear cut. It's the big bad bully, but then it's understanding the mathematics, and then understanding how we are supposed to optimally fulfill our purpose at this moment. And in the appearance of a seeming obstacle, where are the continuing pathways through or amidst that obstacle? And instead of it just being a clear-cut path where we walk carefree along the path, it might be sidestepping a puddle, it might be leaping over a puddle, or otherwise. All right, I'm speaking a lot in abstract. It helps to speak in like tangible examples initially, but to be honest, at the moment, the time is less availing of that. I'm trying to remember if there's a lot to share. but there's only so much available in terms of a window to share. I mentioned some things at the beginning of this joint about, God willing, we'll get to this later on in a few moments. My concentration, to be honest, at this point is comparatively low. We're at 22nd hour. It's been a comparatively relaxed day. I haven't done too much work, but recuperation from previous things in my back is joint. So no excuses, but just it affects concentration, and I'm recognizing it's difficult for me to specifically recall what I was talking about at the beginning of this joint 45 minutes ago. And even to just labor to try to concentrate, to remember, that might take another 5-10 minutes, and then to explain it another time. And at this moment, that's other than happening. The snow continues to fall, though. Just trying to think of anything of priority to share at the moment at this window. And as I try to think about what I was thinking about before. I was talking about the train, and I was talking about relationship and the string attached, and how it is that we've jumped off the train, so to speak, but at the same time, we hold these trains, and what is this floating device that's next to the train that allows, it seems like a very strained metaphor, but then how does that apply to what we're actually doing in a plausible and helpful sense? So the notion of the string connected with the train is the recognition that we, even in jumping off the train and in distancing ourselves from civilization, it's not a superiority thing. It's not a better or less than thing. And that's one thing. It's a matter of just, that's the facts. That's what we've done. I am not a citizen. I don't have a bank account. I haven't filled out a tax for return in over 20 years since graduating from law school. This is not bragging. These are examples of how I personally distance myself from civilization. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I live in Ohio. I interact amidst the infrastructure, financial and otherwise, because that's the pragmatism at the moment. It is illegal to harvest fruits, vegetables, and things from parks or otherwise to provide for oneself in terms of sustenance. It's illegal to live in parks at this moment. And so we endeavor that. The consequence of doing that is being arrested by the police, being put in psych wards indefinitely, being tortured with chemical concoctions and otherwise. So it's the actuality of being this. It's illegal to leave the country. One requires, in order to leave the country, as we understand, because we've endeavored to do it, when we try to leave the country, one requires some type of government identification to get permission to leave the borders. So it's extremely difficult. Endeavoring to go to native reservations, that takes a lot of relationship cultivation, and otherwise it's all a matter of having to engage with the imperial system. So that's what we do. And in doing that, we have a responsibility in a relationship with all our relations. And we've been trained, I've personally been trained in these ways. And so there's an ongoing responsibility that I have in honoring those relationships and sharing and fulfilling my obligation and my responsibilities in that relationship. I've been provided with knowledge about how the system works, and additionally by the system itself. And so I have a vested responsibility in maintaining some type of civil order within society for the well-being of life on this continent and on this earth and in this universe. So there's an ongoing responsibility of relationship, but in the same time, withdraw as much as possible from the citizen imperial behavior, activities, and further obligations. I've never voted. I'm not, and again, I don't vote at this moment. So those are ways of jumping off the train, and it's only some ways. And I'll address one thing at the moment, because I'm seeing a number of this stuff. So going on social media, this and the other, there's a solicitation for me to be on social media because it's unfavorable. There's little. It's very unhealthy to be on social media. It's very unhealthy to be on the internet. It's very unhealthy to be with any device. Physically unhealthy with the radiation and everything else. And it's mentally unhealthy because there's just so much negative. There's so much negative suggestion and predatoriness. It's unhealthy heart-wise because this takes us away from each other further than it brings us together. It isolates us, so that the thing that people see from me over the past 20 years is me doing this by myself. That's not heart healthy, and it also takes away from. It's also unhealthy for the spirit because it involves us in this earthly experience of ubiquity rather than connecting with the natural energy of who we are and where we are. So on all those levels, mind, body, heart, and spirit, these devices are unhealthy. But at the same time, there's this paradox that we're continuing to reconcile about utilizing these things to continue to connect, because that's what we're trained, that's what we're accustomed to, and otherwise. So there is a strong push to be even further invested in these devices. And so we withdraw as much as possible from that push of being further entrenched. There is a higher guidance, there's a transcendent guidance of being without any of these devices and to be simply immersed within our experience of universe around ourselves. I have yet to reach that type of ongoing graduate level of spirituality. So I'm in the intermediary stage of utilizing devices in a comparatively moderate way. So that is part of the engagement with imperialism and the system and otherwise. But in terms of being committed to it and obligated to it, from this point and continuing, we withdraw as much as prudently, as much as is prudent. So that's one way of describing us jumping off the train. It's beneficial. Again, that was a side note actually, because I was saying I was in watching social media. There's an observation of many kinfolk living off grid. That's another way of describing much of what I live. Having the lights on is comparatively uncommon as well for myself. Two types of being off grid that's important to recognize, that's beneficial to recognize. One type of off grid is the physical off grid, which is hugely legitimate. Physically off grid, I'll just say the two and then describe them. There's physically off grid and there's fiscally off grid. The physically off grid means living out in a country, building up the eco village, solar paneling, and not living off of any of municipal government or private corporation energy, electricity, plumbing, water, sewage, living completely autonomous or effectively autonomous in terms of day-to-day lifestyle. And additionally, everything is self-sufficient. There might be bartering or something like that. There might be trade. Some people can hold money, but generally physically off-grid, meaning living by oneself. There it is. Might be a village, might be a homestead or otherwise, but physically off-grid. That's the first type. And there are many, couldn't maybe even say millions of kinfolk who are living like this around the world. Physically off-grid. What am I saying? There's even billions when we talk about just people doing it just naturally. Indigenous kinfolk in agricultural nations and otherwise, but particularly in industrialized society, physically off-grid. Fiscally off-grid. That's a different thing, and it's actually they both are the same kind of larger path, but they're very different. And it's beneficial for both. It's prudent to do both, but it's extremely difficult to do both. I am in that latter category of being fiscally off-grid. And fiscally off-grid is what I described to you before. Being without a citizenship, being without a bank account, being without insurance, being without all these connections with the imperial system that provide tangible benefits of just how to be in this life, being without any land titles, being without any savings or trust or other things like that. So that's fiscally off-grid, and there's prudence in it, but it's a difficult trot. Gangsters do it, indigenous kinfolk do it, children do it who are under the age of citizenship. People who are living on the streets, the indigent, do it. There are a number of kinfolk who do it. Spiritualists do it. Many religious leaders are prohibited from being citizens or holding money in additionally. So there are a number of groups that do it, but it's very small. The numbers are very small. And the point for sharing that is that just to recognize the nature of both, the benefits as well as the drawbacks of both. And particularly from our side, our priority right now is having land. And by having land, I don't mean having title of land or owning it. It means negotiating with somebody who has arrangement with the imperialist system or whatever else, where it is accepted for us to reside on a particular area of land so that we have a stable homestead to build from. So that's what we're working on. That's a priority for us at the moment. So in being physically off-grid, I reside within this domicile. It's actually a government facility, so to speak, but at the same time, there's still challenges with that. So I personally am fiscally off-grid, but I'm still physically on-grid for the most part. And even in being physically on-grid, withdraw as much as possible, no refrigerator, utilize electricity as minimally as possible. I don't pay rent, so don't pay utilities. So even in being physically on grid, still withdrawing that as much as possible. I use money at the moment because it's somewhat of a stopgap measure at the moment. There are a number of years where I don't touch money. And that's a whole other thing. I've said it before. I've described it on certain occasions, the details of that. But that's another conversation. But the point is, again, two types of off-grid. Physical off-grid, which is legitimate. But at the same time, kinfolk can be physically off-grid and live in a very prudent way in terms of not dealing with government, or not relying upon the government for basic things like utilities and heat when it's a snowy day and lovely, and just living independently. There's a peace, there's a calmness that comes with that. But at the same time, kinfolk can still be citizens. Kinfolk can still be paying taxes. Kinfolk can have trust funds and be millionaires, actually. Hold land titles and still live fiscally on grid, because that's what keeps the government away from invading and taking it over. They have all their paperwork and they pay the taxes, property tax on a yearly basis, and they have everything in order on being off grid physically, but fiscally on grid. So it's not a knock on that, but it's just to recognize both, because there's a lot of bridge building between the two, because a lot of the kinfolk who are activists, who are coming from struggle movements, and additionally who live involuntarily or voluntarily off-grid fiscally, have legitimacy and striving for certain things, and kinfolk who are affluent and knowledgeable and just removed from mainstream society and are physically off-grid have lots of benefits and also lots of needs from kinfolk who are fiscally off-grid. So it's just a matter of building those bridges, and that's part of the ongoing purpose of our collective path for those who are inclined for such. But anyways, that's one thing to articulate. So when we talk about holding on to the strings connected with the train, that's just the nature of our relations in this universe. Is we're always connected, and so we always have an interest in the well-being of others, and it's not a matter of being pejorative or patronizing or otherwise, in looking at others as being less than and having to be the care providers for whatever, but it's a genuine empathy, and if somebody's on that training experience suffering, I'm on that training experience suffering. is that oxymoronic? At some hour of the day, the concentration is dulled to the point of there being a realm of absence, a realm of the absence of logic to discern between the oxymoronic and the synonymity or such. All right. What else we talk about? Again, when being confronted with the challenges, and rather than perceiving it as antagonistic, recognize also, it's beneficial to recognize also that there's essentially three primordial characteristics within every being, even with every phenomena and with every circumstance: creation, destruction, and preservation. That particularly comes from the Vedic tradition of creator, preserver, and destroyer. But again, rather than to perceive things as personally antagonistic or systemically antagonistic, to understand certain things as just as its nature and as its purpose. And within that notion of the yin and the yang, creation and destruction, and the continual experience of the transcendence and the balance amidst that, we can see as preservation, and whatever our perceived guidance is within that, to recognize that some people play a role, some beings and some phenomena play a role of destruction in this universe. Some beings and phenomena and elements in this universe play the role of creation, and some beings and elements and circumstances play the role of preservation. And there's an element of that, of each of those characteristics within each of us. And so there's a time when there's prevalent destruction. There's a time when there's prevalent creation. There are episodes and there are epochs of these conditions. So it's simply a matter of recognizing it as such. And when encountering something that seems like, again, an atrocity, like genocide and otherwise, rather than being angered or clouded by emotional reactionaryism to those experiences and the pain, the suffering, the dukkha that is experienced within those conditions, to look at it and to study and to understand, to do the mathematics of it and say, okay, this is what it is, and here's what my role is and what this is. So the point, basically, creation, destruction, preservation. All right, we're at an hour at this point, so let's work on wrapping this up. All right, yeah, we're getting at that danger zone too, in terms of data, because we're at that stage where if I do not pay attention, we are way low. All right, let's wrap this up. There are a number of other things to share, but we're going to leave it at that because we're at 7 gigabytes on the hard drive and dropping, and it could stop recording on its own even like at 6 or 5. So it was at 13 or 10 just a minute ago. I think we started at 13 and it was 10 last I checked. Now we're at 7. So 7. So it's beneficial whilst I'm thinking about it to wrap this up, because otherwise everything gets blanked. Anything to say as we wrap this joint up? I'll say this. Our focus here is a country house, and that country house being a foundation, a base, a physical base of stability to share what we do, to have a school, just basics, and build however the universe is inclined towards building, knowing that we can only do so much ourselves. I can only do so much myself. And it's other than for me to try to go out and convince people, to win people, inspire people, or otherwise per se. That's other than my guidance at this moment. My guidance is just to do it as much as possible. We have the materials now. We have the elements. What we see as my responsibility at the moment is solidifying what we already have. We have the guidance, we have the daily routines, we have the weekly routines, and monthly and yearly. We have the rituals, we have the methodologies for learning our languages and learning our rivers, where we come from, our ancestral languages. We have stories, we have the songs, we have many songs. And so we have the elements, and at the moment, my guidance is to organize these materials in a proficient way, to make it available at this moment and for continuing generations, because that's something that I'm basically able to do on my own without having to rely too heavily upon others. That's the benefit that I share, because kinfolk are encouraged by this. Kinfolk are strengthened by this. And there's greater capacity for kinfolk to cooperate and share their kinfolk's additional skills. Kinfolk can sing way better than I can. Kinfolk can tell stories way better than I can. Kinfolk can convene rituals way better than I can. So it's for kinfolk to be strengthened and informed by what I share, and then whoever is encouraged and inspired to commit to in a similar way and to the same extent as I do, in terms of living off grid fiscally and physically, and contributing life walk for this purpose and this cause, then we build accordingly as a band of kinfolk together. And it happens, inshallah, B'ezrat Hashem, God willing, Jai Om. But purpose for me is to focus on the service I provide and bringing these materials and organizing and presenting it in an optimal way. And right there, that's a whole lot right now, because we did a whole lot to acquire the elements, to receive the elements, a holy lot. And thank God we have it at this moment, as much as we can have anything. And so my personal guidance is to further organize that and then strengthen my practice. I'm starting to get talking again. That's the one priority is the country house. And again, it's a country house because it's comparatively simple. It's a physical space. It's a place of residence. It's a place of refuge and visitation and even pilgrimage, and building from there, building village around this. For those who are inclined, we're amidst available space, co-residing, building another facility, whatever. There's a lot of options. We've learned, we've studied a number of the different options whenever, God willing, it gets to that point. And amidst there being further growth of community, and additionally, it might be a matter of negotiating arrangements for a surrounding area of land around that country house. It might be a matter of moving to another place nearby or otherwise, but it's step by step within our means and within our hands. So that's what the focus is. And again, a significant priority for myself personally is being married, and I put myself out there much for many. But that's a continuing thing. And again, that's something that's beyond my hands and my doing personally. And it's humbling, but it happens by the grace of the Most High. So that's where the focus is. And other than that, strengthening the day-to-day, the prayers and meditation on a daily basis, the daily and weekly studies, practicing the songs, learning languages. I got many ancestors and many ancestral languages to learn. There are priorities in that respect, matrilineal, as well as contemporary politics and otherwise. So there's much to do, and it's day by day. And we say Hallelujah, Alhamdulillah, Baruch Hashem, Shishim Bado, Jayom, to it all. And in terms of reaching out to kinfolk, we have a very beautiful network of kinfolk already who we are in relationship with, and we do our best to honor our relations and our communication as much as possible. Again, another thing that precipitates the utilization of the devices. Having a space that kinfolk are aware of and feel safe and comfortable in visiting is a strong way of optimizing our relationships accordingly and stabilizing this experience. In terms of reaching out to anybody that I personally have yet to know, for myself to reach out to people that I've yet to meet or groups that I've yet to meet, our priority at this point is indigenous kinfolk that we know about already, but perhaps that we have yet to establish that I personally have yet to establish a direct relationship with. That's one category of groups that we have a guidance to be proactive in reaching out towards. Another one is the Rastafari sound systems from the different locations of the world. Those are the two categories of kinfolk in terms of direct outreach. We welcome anyone to holler at us, and we build accordingly. That's what I do on a regular basis by the grace of the Most High. But in terms of reaching out, those are the two categories. We focus on a consideration of honest indigenous agriculture as a way of sustaining ourselves, understanding how important nutrients are, nutrition is, nature is, and feeding ourselves and doing that in the most honest and natural and healthy way. And to do that requires having strong relationship with indigenous kinfolk and receiving our nutrients from kinfolk who have an indigenous relationship with the land, the plants and the animals and all our kinfolk who share these nutrients. And we recognize there are many kinfolk in industrial society, in Western civilization and world civilization who have an increasing interest in doing similar things. Many of whom endeavor to do it in a comparatively imperialistic way, of kind of just being like a nuanced kind of wing of the regular mainstream imperialist methodologies, and not digging on that, but just recognizing it. And one reason why that is because many people who have the inclination of honesty and health and the things I just mentioned also at the same time have our distance from indigenous kinfolk, don't know anybody who's indigenous per se, and are uncomfortable and kind of even brokering that because, one, uncertain what's involved in that, uncertain what's going to be lost within oneself, because kinfolk know how distant the imperial experience is from indigeneity, and how, particularly on this Western Hemisphere, many people can't even think about indigenous people. So even just to talk about it, it's just it's not even like hating indigenous people. It's just an extremely deeply entrenched guilt and avoidance and just a pain. It's basically like talking about knowing, like someone was like 12, 13 years old and they saw their parents kill somebody just in cold blood and couldn't say anything, couldn't do anything about it because they're a child and they don't have that power. But they know that their family benefits from that, and it's just swept under the rug. The whole village knows it, but nobody cares or nobody does anything about it. So that 10, 20 years later, whatever else, you can't even talk about it. And you can't hate that person that was killed because what they do, nothing. But meanwhile, can't talk about it because otherwise stand to lose the house and everything else that was gained from that. That's what it is in the Western civilization for many kinfolk. Many kinfolk love indigenous kinfolk and want the best and want to like make amends, but know that even taking a step in that direction is liable to be like not just vilified or ostracized, but like done in by the imperial system. That just like, you better not say anything about that. You better not say anything. And so that's part of the difficulty, because when kinfolk are looking for solutions to the disease and the poisons of mainstream society at the moment, they see there's a necessity of going back to the land, of going back to that garden experience, organic, restorative, and there are all these different terms for agriculture these days, but that's indigenousness. And to do that in a sustainable way requires being reconciled. For kinfolk living in Europe, it's not as much of a big thing because many kinfolk in Europe are indigenous to Europe. But particularly in the United States, it is blasphemy to talk about indigenous. It's literally blasphemy. Within the mainstream folds of corporate industry and corporate agriculture, and everything, the entrenchments, for anybody in those midst to talk about indigeneity in a genuine, honest way, in a positive way, that's going against the whole raping of the energy, oil, fracking, or whatever all the different things are called, uranium and otherwise. The whole machinery, the imperial machinery of just ripping the minerals and nutrients from the land in an egregious way. There's a lot of momentum, but people know that that's what's necessary to be healthy. And actually, anybody who has children and has an interest of their children being healthy in the next generation, and their grandchildren being healthy in the next generation, know that this is what is necessary. But it's tough. It's tough. So, anyways, that's where our conversations are at this moment. There's so much further. But again, for the sake of maintaining what we got right here at the moment, we're talking about maintaining and all what we got and all this, that, and the other. Before this thing crashes, we're gonna waterfall, right? Of course, and all at the same time we say, all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim, known by many names and beyond all names, Abuna Rastafari, all our relations. Bless, love, and peace.